Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast with Mike and Mike. Sales is a thinking process. This podcast will help you learn about what works in sales, how to hone your skills, and increase your success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm here with Mike Simmons. How are you doing, Mike?
Jody, I am doing very well. How are you?
Well, I'm great. We're recording Catalyst Sale, so you know I'm doing wonderful.
I know it's the highlight of your every couple of days, every couple of weeks kind of thing, depending on what our schedule is.
It definitely is. And especially when we get a guest like we have this week. We're going to talk to Ryan Carson, the CEO and founder of Treehouse. So tell us a little bit about Ryan.
So Ryan, like you said, CEO and founder of Treehouse. I've been following Ryan for, I'm going to say a little bit over maybe a year and a half now. I forget the first time that I heard his name and where he actually came up, but there are a number of areas of alignment, both in the information that he puts out in the market, just general interest that he has. So number one, education technology. Number two, helping people do things better. And he actually is up in Portland where I've got a sister-in-law. So we just there's this commonality that's out there. And I think we might get into this a little bit later, but I think he's in the process of training for a Spartan race. So I'm going to wonder how that came up and why he's taken that on. He's also another one of those people who takes pictures of himself at 4:30 in the morning. And we might get into that a little bit as well. So Ryan, thank you for joining the podcast.
It's a joy. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait. Thanks for having me.
Well, so I'm going to dive right into it before we just get into your story. And I'm going to ask you, what's broken in education?
Oh boy, everything. Oh man. It's interesting because, I have kids that are in elementary school in the public system here in America, and there's massive challenges there, and then you go up further and same brutal challenges in middle school and high school. And then what I'm always railing on about in social media about higher education, it's pretty tough. And I do want to say, if anyone's listening and they're in education, thank you. You are the heroes, the folks that are mostly underpaid, overworked. And I applaud you. I'm mostly talking about the system. We've got pretty brutal legacy systems that are hard to change. And there's a ton of challenges. And that's literally why I started my school, just to try to create a newer path that could get people jobs. So it's sad how hard it is, but it's also encouraging to see all the innovation happening. So.
Yeah. So when you think of innovation in education, where is the focus today?
So my main focus is in what would typically be higher ed, where people are learning to get a job. So the primary, amount of my work is there. But because I've got kids, we also have tried to, be helpful in K-12. And so in K-12, what we try to do is we were trying to raise money to help get Chromebooks into the classrooms, to give people more access to technology, to create more equity. Because, a lot of folks don't have computers at home or don't have broadband. But we encountered serious challenges with that just because a lot of the teachers are overworked and underpaid, and they don't want to learn a whole new thing, and get everybody using Google Docs, and they have too much work to do. So we managed to raise the money, but then to try to get them used was really hard. And again, that's not the teacher's fault. I think it's just the system's fault. So there's that. But then in higher ed, so I'm 40. When I went to college in 1996, the world still pretty much worked like this. You go to college to get ahead, and that degree gets you a job. There wasn't a big student debt problem back then, and everything's changed since then.
Yeah. So my degree is in psychology. I am not a practicing psychologist.
What? Really? I thought I was in your chair. What's going on here? I've been tricked.
Yeah, I tricked you. It was just, I do have a couch back there. As it is, and I think about how I was prepared coming out of school, or what I was prepared for coming out of school. Time management was a big piece. Being able to interact socially with others, count on other teams, work on project teams. Those were the big things that I took away from my education. School was never really for me, though. When my kids listen to the podcast, know that school is for you. This is not a...
Don't do as I do as I say. It's one of those, right?
One of those. And yeah, grades are important.
Sort of.
Well, I graduated with a 2.0 GPA.
Right.
Just talk about GPAs. I graduated with 2.0 GPA. And the only reason I had a 2.0 GPA is because I got A's on my last 8 classes at ASU in order to become eligible to graduate.
Right. See, it's all a ridiculous game. It's so hilarious. Like, I didn't even bother to look like whether you have a degree or whether you were good at school before I came to this podcast. I mean, what bearing does that have on reality in any of our adult lives? None. Right. And so the whole point of this system blows my mind. So this all started because I got a degree in computer science. And, I'm one of those lucky kids where my parents were like, yeah, you're going to go to college. We're going to help pay for that. This is your path. Go. I did it. And I got the degree. And then I got my first job. And it's like they didn't even bother to ask, well, are you going to make sure to take this theoretical knowledge you've learned and apply it to our, complex website? No, just, hey, build the thing. Right. And, hey, make sure to get along with your team, And I just thought, what was that? Where in the world is the connection between my expensive college degree and this trade job I have? And the big message I have for everybody listening is I think we've moved into a world where trade skills and trade jobs are actually all of our jobs. Look at you. You are essentially an advanced tradesperson. You're stacking your skills together, creating things, building things. I'm a CEO, but I'm basically doing the same things. And almost everybody, as long as you're not some, extreme profession like brain surgeon, you're really doing a trade skill versus a science career. And so what I'm trying to do is say to folks, let's decouple, success and happiness from the college degree. I'm not anti-college. I'm just pro-person. So I think we're trying to help people open their minds up to this idea that there's a new path. And college is great if you can go without debt. But if you're going to get $1 of debt, then do the math on that and make sure that it's actually a good investment. The stuff you mentioned that you learned, how to work in a group, how to, hit deadlines, how not to be a terrible person. That stuff you learn on the job. So a lot of folks are coming out of Treehouse as apprentices and they're learning those things. Oh, I got to show up and work on time. I have to learn how to get along in a group. Otherwise I get fired. I mean, these are all actually skills you'd learn normally in real life. They don't need to be learned at an expensive school. So I could go on for hours about this. So
Perfect.
Don't get me started.
So let's talk about the methodology though. So, a lot of what you're talking about is practical application of skills in the workplace to make an impact on the business. So as you go through like Treehouse as an example, how does that work? Or we can make it Treehouse specific. We can make it education technology specific. We can go in any direction there. But how do you help facilitate learning so that it turns into practical application so that it makes an impact on the business?
So we just simply start with projects. The idea that all everyone is doing at work every day are some sort of project, whether it's, creating a podcast or it's writing a piece of content or it's launching something or it's building a website. They're all projects. So we're not taught complex theories that then we try to figure out how to map to projects. We actually just simply say, build the project. And then we're going to work backwards from that. So whether it's Treehouse or not, we happen to ask people to do practical things like build an iOS app or build an Android app or build a website. And then you end up learning the necessary skills, which you end up using in real life. I just think somehow the word trade school turned into a bad word in America. And it's crazy because it is the American dream. You work hard, you learn a skill to earn a living that takes care of your family. And you do that by working hard. When did theoretical, lofty college knowledge become the path to that? So what we say is do projects, and I think this would be a better way of learning, period. If you were thinking about going into media, you might say, okay, well, try to create a YouTube show and figure out how to make it compelling, figure out how to get guests, figure out how to do lighting, figure out how to attract advertisers. That would be a much better education than it would be going to any college that I know of. So
yeah, definitely. You're actually doing the work, which is what you're describing. Do the work. And it becomes simple when you think of it in that context, yet we overcomplicate it by talking academic theory or talking about applying or talking in theory.
Right. Well,
think about swimming.
Right. Swimming.
Right. So Imagine learning how to swim by reading a book
Right.
and then being pushed off a boat in the ocean. What happens?
Bad things. I mean, and that's a great analogy. I mean, it is kind of bonkers because you're learning from people often in schools that haven't actually done the work commercially, very often, or if they did, it was a long time ago. And again, that's not their fault. They're hardworking folks that are doing their job, but it's disconnected from reality anyway. We talk to people all the time that are learning how to build things with technology that nobody uses today. They're using tools that nobody uses anymore. And so you come out of school not only learning the wrong things, but you're 4 years behind where you would have been, and you have student debt. It just doesn't make any sense. And we need to disassociate success from this path and almost like the moral high ground. And it's tough because, I'm dealing with a lot of folks from underrepresented people, color, and women who they've been told over and over again, the way to get to this path is by getting a degree. And so they're doing everything they can to get their colleges into that path, their kids into that path. And then it turns out it was basically a sham, that the degree they're getting is from some terrible predatory for-profit school like the Art Institute or something. And they're not getting value for their money anyway. So I think this is going to change. I think we're getting close to a breaking point on it.
So let's talk about your story, kind of how you got here. So take us all the way back. And I know that you've exited, you've had a couple of companies that have gone through acquisition, but just kind of how'd you get, why did you choose to focus on the space? How'd you get here? Give us the backstory.
Yeah, you bet. So like I said, grew up in Colorado. And when I was in high school, one of my teachers said, "Hey, did you know you can tell computers what to do?" And I was like, "No, what do you mean?" And she said, "It's called programming." I thought, gosh, that sounds fun. So let's do that. I tried my first programming language. It was called Pascal. Loved it. It's kind of interesting. And so when I went to college, studied computer science. I am not really geeky or nerdy or great at math or science, but I just enjoy creating things. So went that path, and I chose Colorado State University. I didn't apply to any other schools because my three sisters went there and we're good friends. And I just thought, I guess I'll just go there. So I kind of wish I could go back in time and say, you should probably be a little more aspirational in that. But oh well, it worked out. And so got my degree. And then I realized I lived in Colorado my whole life. And I wonder if my worldview is limited somehow because of that. And that's not bad if you live in the same place. But I just thought, I wonder, if there's something I'm missing. So I watched a film called Notting Hill, which should have won an Oscar because it's so amazing. That's actually a cheesy rom-com. But I watched it and thought, that looks great. I want to live there. And so I moved to London. And it turns out you have to be like a millionaire to live like they do in the movies. So did not live very well because it's insanely expensive.
So what I've just demonstrated is my movie knowledge is limited to movies where things get blown up.
Then you're missing out big time.
Michael Bay, all that kind of stuff.
You should have grown up with three sisters. Then you would know all about Hugh Grant and Notting Hill and these kind of things. You're missing out.
I am missing out.
So then I got my first job over there. And that's the experience I talked about. I had this amazing computer science degree. And then they basically said, "Hey, Ryan, can you build a website?" And it was just kind of shocking to me, the difference. So that's where the seed of Treehouse began to grow. But meanwhile, I was just a developer. I was building websites, building apps, and living in England. And then I told my parents, "Don't worry, I'll come back in a year. It's going to be fine." And then I met a girl, and she kind of wrecked all my plans.
Awesome.
And it was great. And we got married. And so all of a sudden I'm married to a British woman. And I'm thinking, I want to start a company, and basically ended up staying in England for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm 40, but for a chunk of my life, I actually lived, 33% or more of my life outside of America, which was weird, and learned a lot when I did that. So, but through this process, I thought, I think I can start my own company. And the reason why is because I looked at my boss, and his job seemed easy to me. It's like, how can that be? You kind of boss people around and you drive a fancy car and I could do that.
Sounds pretty simple.
Yeah, this shouldn't be so bad. So I was also influenced by a company called 37 Signals, which is now known as Basecamp. Jason Fried and David Hennemeyer Hansen were blogging a lot at the time. This is 2004, about how anyone can find a problem to solve and build a simple piece of software to solve that problem and then charge monthly for it. And, you really just need a couple hundred clients or maybe 1,000 and you can literally support yourself.
Yep.
And so I really, bit into that and thought, yeah, I'm a developer. I can build something. And I saw a simple problem that needed to be solved, which was sending large files. So in 2004, couldn't send large files. There was no Dropbox. There was no, Google Drive. And so we literally couldn't send files larger than 2 megs.
Okay.
Which is kind of hard to imagine now. I mean, I think a JPEG is bigger than 2 megs now. I mean, it's,
I remember 1.25 inch floppy drive, even 5.25 inch.
Yeah. 5.25. Yep. The big floppy ones. Yeah.
So those didn't have, I don't think you could put 2 meg on one of those.
I think they were like 800K or something. I mean,
really aging things. So meanwhile, I've got a terabyte of storage on a OneDrive now.
Right. I mean, and this audio recording already is it's already 240 megs, right? So anyway, this is a dumb problem. I thought I can solve this. So I built a really simple service called Flight Deck. I built it at night. I didn't have kids yet. Jill and I weren't married yet. I just had tons of time. So I was like, I'm going to build this in my free time, and built it. And I thought if I can get one customer to pay me like £3,000 to install this piece of software, I can quit, because that's, maybe 1 to 3 months of pay. And so I built it, and then I started kind of quietly selling it, in my free time. And I found my first customer. And I'll never forget, they actually wrote me a check. And so I got my check and I was like, I quit. So awesome. Went up to my boss and I said, I'm out.
Well, you gave 2 weeks.
Maybe, I don't know.
I hope you did.
Yeah. I hope that otherwise I'm kind of a dick, which I don't think I am. So,
right.
And I remember he sat me down and he's like, Ryan, it's harder than you think to run a company. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Just let me go. And I used to have a blog called The Naive Optimist. And, I tend to look at things through an optimistic, naive lens. And I just thought, I can figure it out. And turns out it was hard. And it was terrible, basically. So got married at that moment, started the company at the same time. And basically my desk in our top bedroom, and started to try to sell this piece of software, and basically banged my head against the wall for about a year and failed. So
you said trying to sell this piece of software. So what did you learn about sales in that first startup?
Oh boy. It's interesting because what I learned is that in hindsight is that I priced it high enough that it meant I was really doing B2B sales versus B2C. And so it wasn't going to be a consumer who grabbed their card and signed up. It was going to have to be a manager or a director or VP that would, okay the purchase. And I didn't even know that. And so I was trying to kind of market it as a consumer product and failing. And I priced it too high, made it too hard to sign up. And I think in the end, I got maybe 3 or 4 customers who were paying me around £200 to £300 a month for the software. And I just couldn't get above that.
It's amazing how many organizations miss on product market fit.
Oh my gosh. Flat out. I didn't even understand I was missing it. I thought, I don't get it. Like, this solves a problem. Why aren't people buying it?
All my friends and family say they would buy it.
Right. Exactly. And so kind of went quietly crazy for a year. I don't know what I don't know. I can't seem to figure it out. And I started telling myself back then I was bad at sales, which is interesting because, I love people. I love relationships. I like making people happy. I like solving problems. And somehow in my mind, that meant I couldn't do sales because people would say no to me, or I was trying to get them to buy something and that wasn't friendly. And I believed it. And this fast forwards back to now, where actually my whole life has changed, because actually I realized I love sales. I mean, and as soon as I believe in something, it's the most fun thing ever to try to sell it. And I can't believe I didn't know that about myself back then.
Awesome. So just to fast forward through a couple of these things. So you've got this, you've got the product, you flounder with that. You then move to I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that happened between there and when you exited that organization. How'd you come to the decision that it was time to exit? Was it?
Yeah. Let me tell the story. So it was interesting. One day, lunchtime came about and, my wife was off working her job. She was a successful editor at a magazine company. And so I was by myself every day at home. And then lunchtime came one day. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to watch like The Matrix over lunch. So
I have watched that movie.
It's great. But the problem is I was watching a movie over lunch during work time.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember I was kind of sitting there watching and then I thought, this is messed up. I mean, like something's really wrong here. Like
I should be into this thing that I'm doing, not
running from it.
Reason to avoid it. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, I think this is going to fail. I mean, and I got to admit to myself, this isn't working. I'm not passionate about it. And so that night I came down from work from our top bedroom and Jill was hanging out and I said, I got to talk to you. I showed you all these Excel graphs where our revenue was going up to the right and, we were going to make millions of dollars. I was like, I don't think it's going to happen, and all that stuff that I really believed, I think isn't true. And it was really hard. I mean, it was humiliating. It was heartbreaking. It was defeat. It was all that stuff.
Yeah, we're 2 years into this journey of ours, 2.5 years into this. And I mean, what you're describing is it happens. I mean, it's just, and you've got to be okay with the idea of, that little bit of fear or paranoia or sense is very important. And it can help keep you honest on where you're focused and reveal whether or not this is the thing for you.
Yep.
And if you don't have a partner like Jill to be able to confide in, that can be really tough. I mean, imagine doing that on your own.
No, it would be really hard. And what's interesting is I didn't believe in that business at its core. It's like sending large files. That really was the fire test that showed, this isn't something I'm willing to go and die on a hill for. Like, I guess the truth is that in order to make this work, I'm going to have to change everything and do everything different and figure it out. And I just didn't want to do it, which is fascinating because the only way you would get me to stop working on Treehouse right now is to kill me. Like, literally, that's the only way I would stop. And I can say that with honesty because yesterday I lost a big deal I was working on and I felt like I got kicked in the face, right? I couldn't sleep for an hour last night, And so, and then I woke up and, the darkness was gone and I was like, screw it. I'm just going to keep going. Right. And so the difference between that business, Treehouse and Flight Deck is that I believe in Treehouse, that what we're doing matters. And so you're right. You have to be able to say, when this goes really wrong, which it will hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Is it something that you actually care enough about to push through? Because otherwise you'll just quit, which has happened. So I think some people think either you're an entrepreneur who never quits or you're an entrepreneur who quits. And I don't think that's true. I think you're an entrepreneur who either believes in your business or doesn't, and that will determine the outcome. Because I've been both. So that's kind of the takeaway I would encourage everyone to think about. If you haven't found that why, that thing, then that's okay. And in the end, if you feel like you're not going to make it in this business and you really can't get up and go one more round, then it might not be the thing. And that's okay. And you shouldn't feel judged for that.
So let's talk about your why for Treehouse.
Yeah. So when I finally realized I wasn't passionate enough about Flight Deck, quit doing it, and then transitioned to another business, I basically realized, well, I like teaching people. I like empowering people. I like helping people. Like that's really important to me.
Yep.
I also know that technology is going to change the world. So it's kind of 2006-ish, 2005-ish. And it's clear, okay, software is eating the world. So I thought if I can teach people technology, then they can change their life. I grew up in a pretty religious environment and I'm not really religious now, but I am very set on helping people so that they can be happy. And what I realized, okay, you got to be able to meet your basic needs to be happy. You have to have a job that pays well enough. You have to have freedom. And technology can give you those things if you learn it. And so we started teaching in person. That's the only thing I could think of at first, teach people how to code in person. Yay. And we actually used, O'Reilly books, we did all these, offline things, and it was fun and it did work. We actually did our first workshop. We emailed a bunch of people and people bought tickets and we made money on the first one.
Awesome.
And it was called How to Build Enterprise PHP Web Apps.
Very cool.
Super sexy workshop.
Yep.
It was great.
Oh, yeah.
So we did that and it worked. And I was like, okay, and people came up and they're smiling afterwards and excited and empowered. And I thought, this is cool. Like, I want to do this for a job.
Yeah, you could see it in their eyes. You could see what happens when they create, when they are able to do something that they couldn't do before they walked in the room.
Yes.
And that's pretty exciting. It's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's like I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do it.
Right.
And so like, let's do another one. We did another one and it sold out. Another one. And then we're like, let's do one. This was all in the UK. So let's do one in Chicago. That sold out, New York. Yay. And it was fun, but it wasn't scalable. So after doing that for years, we did it, I think for about 5 years, got to a point where I had a kid. And so I've got two amazing boys. One just turned 10. And so he was born, Jackson was born. And, it just made me feel really mortal. Like, I'm not the young one on the block anymore. I'm going to die. Right. So, oh man. And I just thought, okay, I'm definitely going to die someday. It just became really real to me. I don't know why.
Right.
And I thought, okay, so if I'm going to die, I better get a move on. And if I intend to make a big impact in the world, I need to start. So how do we take this cool thing we're doing and then scale it and make it more affordable so it can help more people that need it? And I chatted to my wife a lot about it. How do we do this? How do we also make the revenue recurring? Because it was hella stressful, doing these big events and these workshops where you got to sell a ton of tickets and you don't quite know if you're going to sell the tickets until the day before. And you're, freaking out and sweating and praying that people sign up. And I just thought, I don't want to do that forever either.
It's hard to predict what your business is going to look like 12 months down the road when you're selling tickets that have a transactional component to them that just happen sometimes the day of the event or a couple of days before the event, right?
Yeah. And then, crazy things can happen. Like there is a, public transportation strike or there's a disaster, or a volcano goes off. So it was kind of a couple of these things. How do we help more people have a recurring revenue business and, be able to sleep at night?
Yep.
So I was talking to my wife about it and we were getting ready for work and just brushing my teeth. And I said, how do we do it? And she's like, well, Linda does videos and they charge people $25 a month. Like, why don't we just hire some teachers? We have teachers. Why don't we hire them and have them do videos and we'll charge $25 a month? I was like, yes. That's it. Like, it's so simple. And this was 2010. So the reality was, yes, we do know how to teach people. We do know amazing teachers. Like, we have all the components. And also, very importantly, we had built a content marketing business to support the events business. So
good.
We had really gone all in on a blog. Social media still wasn't really a thing back in 2010. A little bit, and so built a blog called Think Vitamin. And Think Vitamin was all about web design and web development. And it got big, like any good content strategy does if you put in the time.
Yep.
And so what we did is we launched this new idea on top of that blog. We used all the hard work we had put in over the years building an audience, and we attached this new brand to that blog. So the blog was called Think Vitamin. Terribly, the idea was called Think Vitamin Membership. Wow, yes, I'm a branding expert. And
it could have been Think Vitamin Club.
Yeah, true. Oh, yeah. Is that better?
So it could have been worse.
You're right. It could have been worse. And so, but actually as a short-term strategy that did work. People got it. Oh, okay. It's attached to Think Vitamin. You learn how to code. Great. And it just took off. Day one, we funded it with cash flow from the events business.
Awesome.
And we started small. We didn't raise any venture capital or anything like that. And as soon as we launched it, and we had something like 3,000 students on day one or week one or something, it was really fast. I realized, yes, this is something that could change the world. I want to really, double down on this. So at that moment, we decided we need to sell this in-person training company and really, double down on online. And I had never really successfully sold a proper business. I had sold one of the products we had built a while, but it was really kind of a product asset sell. Whereas this was, I need to sell this business.
Yeah, you were selling a technology as opposed to a business. Yep.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know how to do that. And so we went through a business broker and just said, help us sell this business. And it ended up working. We did sell it. Unfortunately, we had one buyer. And so there was no auction mentality. We didn't really have leverage. And, I learned a couple of key things. One of the brutal things that happened was the day that we were about to sign the contracts, they called and they said, yeah, so how we were going to give you, a 1x multiple, guess what? It's 0.92 now. And I mean, I was okay.
You're
thanks.
Like, you didn't walk away, or at least
I couldn't
to see whether or not they were really bluffing or what all was going on there.
Yeah. The problem is when you don't have leverage, you don't have leverage.
That's right. Yep.
And this is the thing I've learned. Do not get in that position.
Yep.
Because you can't win. And the same thing applies to raising money from venture capitalists. The same thing. I mean, it's such a good life lesson that if you don't have leverage, you can't pretend you do.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you've found that you can, I think you're considering the different types of audience that we've got out there, but what are some ideas around how people can create leverage?
So the very basic answer is you actually have to do something that's good.
Yeah.
You really gotta, you can't kind of trick the system and there's no hack and shortcut. You literally have to go build something that's actually, worth something. And the problem is the mentality now is like, oh, I need to go raise money in order to build something that's valuable. No, it's backwards. Because it's the same problem with investors.
Yep.
You don't have any leverage if you don't have something that's valuable. So the brutal answer is you got to do some hard freaking work.
Yep.
For years. Right. And there is no shortcut to that. And, and just because we've all watched The Social Network and think, every business is supposed to be like Facebook, it's just not.
I think that's a thing to highlight over and over again. And I know we've said this a number of times on the podcast and we've had an episode where we've talked about it, but there are no shortcuts. There are no quick fixes. If someone is trying to convince you that they're selling you something and there's a reason why they're doing it. They've found some kind of methodology that attacks your interest in solving a problem quickly.
Yes.
The reality is you have to do the work. And what you're going to find out when you do the work is you're going to find out where your blind spots are. You're going to find out what the market's looking for. You're going to actually be able to test ideas and concepts and then iterate, not test ideas and concepts based on someone saying, here are the 3 things that lead to better SEO.
Yeah. It sounds so obvious when you listen to that, but then you get lulled into believing that somehow it doesn't apply to this situation that I'm in. Hey,
I'd love to lose 20 pounds in the next 2 weeks. Anybody have an idea? I could cut an arm off.
Right. It'll be great. Yeah. And this is one of these lessons over and over again. I've just, really started to take to heart, which is why I'm, for instance, a big Jocko fan, because he really does make it simple. He's basically saying there is no shortcut. And that's the bad news is there's no system, there's no to-do list, there's no program, there's nothing. And it's interesting because once you accept it, then that's where the why comes in. Okay, am I ready to do 10 years of hard work? And only then, have something that actually I have good leverage on and build. So that's why that's so important. And I've got that with Treehouse now, and I'm willing to put in decades of work on that. So learned that hard lesson. I tried to sell the previous business, didn't have the leverage. All right, sell it. Hope they take it. And they did. And then I was able to focus, 100% on Treehouse. And now fast forward 8 years and I'm here. And it's both, it feels like an eternity and also a short amount of time. So,
well, and it sounds like it's kind of gone full circle because just before we turned the mics on, you were talking about managing a sales organization inside Treehouse.
Yeah.
Kind of
How'd that happen?
How did it happen? What's it look like? What have you learned? Like all of those kind of things. So,
oh boy. I love talking about this because it's been so interesting to learn it all. So what happened? So the arc of the business, again, I didn't believe I knew how to do sales. So for the first kind of 6 years of the Treehouse journey, I thought I'm really good at products. I know how to build something people love. I know how to teach code. I know how to get people jobs. I'm good at that stuff. And we were lucky with the timing of the launch of the product. So we launched it in 2010. Everybody wanted to learn how to code.
I've got one question before you go on there. So how would you have defined sales in that first 6 years? Like if someone said, what is sales? What would your answer then in that 6-year period?
Yeah, I would say B2B. So selling to businesses, marketing, I would say could be consumer leads or, leads for B2B, but actually closing deals as a person, is what I define as sales, which for us is selling to business.
Okay. So I jumped right in the middle and now I don't remember where your train of thought was.
No, it's okay. I'll keep going. So basically I knew how to do product. I was really good at that and really drilled it in Treehouse in the beginning. We have to have the best product in the world. The marketing and revenue growth will take care of itself.
Yep.
And that kind of was true, interestingly enough, for the first part of our life, had a ton of organic signups and it really was great. We were a consumer business though. We had almost zero B2B accounts. And then at some point I just realized, the market's getting pretty saturated here. I mean, there's a lot of competitors coming up. A lot of people are teaching consumers how to code. We also need to help businesses because they need to also train their folks on how to code, but we don't do any of that now. We got to learn how to do that. So then I thought, I guess I have to hire like a salesperson who can sell to businesses, right? I can't do that. I tried. And so hired a first person. And it was just classic, like hire a sales guy. Okay, interview them. They said they sold a lot of stuff, and they're good at these things. And I just felt so out of my depth.
Sure.
Like I was interviewing a Martian, and it's kind of funny now. Like now I understand these things, but we hired somebody. I thought it was all kind of black magic and that they would turn on things. And then all of a sudden we would start selling to businesses. And that didn't happen.
It's amazing what happens when a B2B sales guru brings in their Rolodex into an organization.
Right. Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. It's all BS. I mean, it just, great. They might have this really good network. And if they're in the right vertical, they might be able to provide some kind of access, but there's no magic.
No. And I literally thought that's what would happen. And it's funny because I was like, is he joking? Because that is a joke. And I thought it was magic and it didn't happen. And I don't want to paint a bad picture for the sales folks that have tried to do these things at Treehouse.
Sure.
What I didn't understand as the founder is they weren't enabled.
Right.
There was no real product for them to sell. There was no real product marketing happening. I mean, it was never going to work. And also as the CEO, I wasn't pro sales. And so from a culture perspective, they were never going to survive. I mean, it was doomed, sadly.
Right.
And this is in hindsight, it's painful, but it's clear to me. So,
and it's common. Like you're not the only one that's gone through that or is going through that today or will go through it in the future. I mean, there are so many people out there like, hey, we just build this product and people will come. And then we build this product. And if the people don't come, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get a new sales guy in because they've got all this experience and they've done it before and they're going to fix it. And they don't know if they hire someone with my LinkedIn profile or Mike's LinkedIn profile or co-founder or some of the people that we've got on our team. They don't know, can they really do that thing that is highlighted inside the LinkedIn profile? And what support do they need in order to be successful? Are they more focused on strategic sales? Are they more focused on things that are a little bit more transactional? There's so many different things that are out there where it's not like, hey, I just need a PHP programmer or someone who knows Java and I can just plug them in. And Mike and I've joked about it before. I mean, we joke about coding as ones and zeros and we realize now it's words, but it just, that we're not the technical folks. So awesome. This is a great story, Ryan. Thank you for sharing it.
No, it's crazy because I really think more entrepreneurs should understand this, that number one, if you think you're bad at sales, then go deeper and say, well, wait a minute. Do I believe in what it is I'm trying to sell? And if you believe in it, you can be a great salesperson because the skills can be learned, right? It's the belief and the passion that has to be there so that you don't quit, right?
I think one of the biggest challenges for founders, and we see this over and over again, is the storytelling.
Yeah.
They can go in and they can talk about why they built whatever it is that they built and what problem they were going to solve and functionally how it does it better than anything else that's out there in the market. But they have a hard time getting others to get involved in that story, get engaged in that story. So if you're that founder that's out there, do some research into storytelling, kind of see how stories come together, what methodology of storytelling, being able to build along that can help you convey the message. And the other thing I would throw out there, and I know we've talked about this before, but you don't fail alone. I mean, there are people that you can go to and ask for help.
Absolutely. And I think the thing I should have done in hindsight is I should have actually tried to be our first salesperson.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, if you can't sell it as the founder, how is somebody else going to sell it?
It's never going to work. And then I would have spotted all these problems. Oh yeah, we don't have a differentiating feature. Like, well, okay, that's not going to work. Oh, we don't have any marketing collateral. That's not going to work. We don't have a good landing page. I don't have any leads. I got to go find leads, and I would have start to fix all that myself and build out all the enablement and support that a salesperson actually needs to succeed.
Yep.
And, and I kind of hate sports analogies because I'm not much of a sports person, but I do think it's kind of similar. So to a sports team. So a lot of founders will think, I just need to hire, let's talk about soccer or football as we say.
Yep.
I need to go hire Ronaldo because that's how you win. They score the goals and then they hire that person and there's no team, there's no strategy, there's no to support that person. And then they fail, they struggle, everyone feels bad, everyone points fingers. And it's like, well, of course they're not going to succeed if the rest of the team isn't able to support them. And it's so obvious to me now.
And sometimes they make the mistake of when Ronaldo doesn't work out, then they need to hire a Messi.
Right.
And if Messi doesn't work out, maybe they need going way back. They need a Maradona.
Right.
And
it all fails.
It all fails. It all fails. Yeah.
And so the sad part of the story is that, unfortunately, we had to let that person go because they didn't thought, okay, they're not doing the job. Let's hire another person. They didn't do the job. And we ended up, hiring a very expensive kind of top level person, again, thinking that somehow that was going to work and it didn't. And
there's a common denominator here. Like there's one thing that hasn't changed.
Yeah, I know. And it's painful to admit that. And so finally I had to look in the mirror and say, I got to learn this.
Awesome.
This is crazy, and so I'm just going to go in there and try to figure it out. And we did have a very hardworking sales team, right? Literally on the ground, account executives, customer success, Salesforce enablement. We had all that and they were working their guts out and, getting killed out there on the field and still actually bringing home some of the bacon, right? And so I thought, okay, I need to get in the trenches with these folks and actually figure this out. And so that we can support them and scale it. And I need to go home and I need to get out there and hunt and kill myself. And so, I literally started watching videos on YouTube, how do you sell things and what's a pipeline and, all this kind of stuff. And eventually figured out, okay, it's pretty straightforward. You figure out your target, you figure out what persona they are, you figure out how to talk to them, you figure out how to find them, and then you're selling meetings. And you put enough people in the top of the funnel and you figure out your conversion rates and out pop sales at the bottom. And then it's just hard work, right? And I was like, this is kind of not that bad, And so started learning and then realized, holy cow, there's a lot of things I hadn't supported the team on. Yeah. And there's a lot of things they didn't have that they needed. And the whole culture of the company wasn't pro sales. And I got to turn that around. I need to make this a pro sales, pro marketing, pro revenue growth company, not treat that as some sort of dirty word. And it's been really, really fun to do that. And there's a lot of energy on the team. And we started doing simple things, so we started doing, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, we started doing 2 daily stand-ups.
Okay.
And one in the morning was, all right, what are we all committing to today? Let's go around the horn.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, did everybody, did you do your commitments? How'd it go? What was a win? What was a loss? And actually, instead of being laborious and hard, it started to create this energy because people were committing to things and they were doing them, right? So it wasn't like, I committed this thing, I didn't do it. It's no, I committed, I did it. I crushed it, right? Yep. Oh man, I lost a deal, but here's what happened. And everyone's like, it's okay, don't worry, and so it created more empathy. And I was, winning and losing deals at the same time. So I was sharing, how things were going great or how they were really hard or, how I feel like I got kicked in the face, or someone didn't show up to my meeting. And it's just, it's fun now.
Yeah.
And we're still not ready to scale. It's kind of bonkers. I'm the CEO founder and I'm running the sales team. And we're going to be doing that for a while until I feel like we've got everything we need to then, promote someone to be that sales manager to take over. Or if I do hire someone, I actually know who I need to hire now and what skills I need to have.
Yeah.
And it's been transformational.
So I want to be mindful of time here. And I've got a couple of different ways or different topics I'd like to get into.
Let's do it.
One of them is around hiring and hiring for behavior instead of skills. And like, how is that applied both in, you think of that, and we'll look at before sales religion and after sales religion. Like this previous 6 years, and then now we are. And really, what I was trying to do is see if I could get Jody to spit out that water, and I just about made it happen. But when you think about the skills and behavior, just kind of riff on that and share what you think about when it comes to skills versus behavior and how you hire.
Oh, absolutely. So what I've learned is to ask people questions like this. Can you tell me about a time when you did this? And instead of, do you know how to manage a CRM? So it's more about, can you tell me about a time where you figured out your funnel and how that mapped to your daily actions?
Yep.
And then you start hearing a story about that. Oh yeah, I realized, okay, this is my target persona. And then I had to figure out how many of them there was in my target market. And then I realized this how many times I need to touch them, which means I had to do X amount of actions per day, you know? And so you start to ask for behavior and then you get quiet and you let them do 80% of the talking. And so those are what we're doing now. And it's also not just in hiring. I think the thing that happens more often is actually feedback during the day to the folks that already work with you. So we actually went through some really good training called Manager Tools. It's a podcast actually that's free. And it's kind of like Car Talk Radio, but for managers.
Awesome. We'll add a link to the show notes here.
It's great. And they have this thing called a Manager Tools Trinity. And it's 3 things every manager needs to do. You need to have one-on-ones every week that are regular, that are about the direct report. Then number 2, you got to give feedback and it has to be all the time. And so I'm actually giving feedback all the time to my team now. And it's really simple. Hey, Fabienne, when you sent that extra email to that customer to give them, a little more information about the deck, that helped them, understand better what we're trying to sell. Can you keep doing that? Hey, Julianne, when you were frowning on that call, it made the customer think that you might be interested in talking to them. Can you not do that? And that kind of feedback actually is what gets your team where they need to go faster and keeps them up to date better. And that should be actually happening every day.
Yeah, that ongoing coaching, that relationship that you have with them, making a direct interaction.
Yeah, and it doesn't take 2 hours or even 10 minutes. It literally takes a minute. Hey, Mike, when you took time to chat to me before this podcast, it made me feel more at ease. Thanks for that, and then you're done. And so we do a lot of that. And then that helps you learn what behaviors you need to be asking about when you hire. So I think behaviors are really key, and then skills can be learned.
Yep. So let's talk about learning process. So how do people learn?
So from a sort of a 50,000 foot view, what we tend to do is we map the skills that someone needs to have to do a job. And then we turn those into learning units. Mm-hmm. And then we break those down into courses. and then we put them in the right order. And then we build projects that require all those things.
Okay.
So you basically say, okay, say that we're teaching someone how to do sales. You'd say, okay, the project is landing $1 million deal. Okay, well, let's break that down into everything you need, all the skill units that you need to actually do that.
Yep.
Researching potential markets, understanding personas, building, a list of leads, loading out actions. You do all that stuff, and then you map it to a course. And then the key thing is we actually don't learn until we take a unit of knowledge and we rearrange it. So the mistake we made at Treehouse is initially when we were teaching how to code, we would say, watch videos and code with us. And we thought, oh, that's great. It's interactive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You would watch someone code and you'd be coding with them. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of the course and then you'd say, okay, now build something that's sort of like what we build. And the students would just lock up because they had never been actually forced to go through the painful process of taking that and actually making it their own.
Right.
Which is the same with everything you learn. And it's actually the scientific way that synapses are formed in your brain. They don't actually form until you take that knowledge and you reform it multiple times. And it's actually painful. It feels tiring. And it's like going to the gym. It's not nice.
Right. It could be. It challenges thought, right? And then
it's not nice. It's hard. Instead of leaning back and kind of absorbing knowledge, you kind of have to lean in and open up your eyes, and it's work. And so we've learned how to do that by forcing people to do projects, and it's been pretty interesting.
So does that get into talent path? Is that are those related to each other, or are they separate? Can you talk a little bit about talent path?
Yeah, thanks. So they're intricately related. So one of the things we realized is that in order to get a job in tech, you need to learn how to build projects. You need to know how to build things. It actually doesn't matter, what color your skin is, or what your gender is, or what your sexual preference is, or where you went to school. Actually, none of that matters. The thing is, can you build this? Right. Just like a carpenter, if you hire a carpenter, you say, show me a deck you built. You don't say, tell me about the school you went to, And so we realized, okay, if we want to get people jobs in tech, we have to give them the skills so they actually build projects. So we started out saying, here is a list of 12 projects that we are going to require you to build. We're going to give you the curriculum so that you'll be equipped how to build those, but we're not going to show you exactly how to build them. And then we're going to, as we take you through those projects, we're going to support you with mentorship and help. And then at the end, we're going to find employers who will hire you as an apprentice. And this is the big key. I think apprenticeship is the key to the future. This idea of learning on the job, and there's so much value to it. So we basically have, and this is to solve an internal problem. So at Treehouse, the brutal truth is, I had built a company that was largely white and largely male because that's what you do naturally. You attract people like yourself. You do what makes you feel comfortable. And I realized this just isn't right. And how did I do that? And it turns out the way to solve the problem is to partner with an organization that has the trust of a community that does not look like you. It's just like, I'm not very good at soccer. So I can't walk into a soccer team and say, play soccer with me, because they're going to say like, what are you doing here? And similar, I can't walk into a group of Black folks and say, I know I'm a white CEO, but trust me, like we want to hire you. It's going to be great. And they're going to say, no, we don't know you. Sorry.
There's a lot of risk, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of risk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why would I do that? And no one like me works with you, so I don't believe you. So we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club and said, hey, you've built the trust of communities of underrepresented people of color. Can you please give this good message that Treehouse wants to hire apprentices and we want to invest in you and them? So they did that. And so we had folks to start to sign up and say, okay, I'm willing to take a risk because the Boys and Girls Club says it's safe. So they come into this program, they learn how to code, they do it at night and on the weekends because they need to hold down a full-time job. And then at the end of that journey, it's about a 6 to 9 month journey. We hire them as apprentices and we mentor them and invest in them. And then after 3 months, they graduate from apprenticeship to a full-time junior developer job. So we did that. And after a lot of hard work, it was successful. And then we realized other companies could use this system. And so we called it Talent Path and we launched it publicly. And it's been really fun. Big companies like Nike and MailChimp and others are installing Talent Path to create that talent.
Awesome. And you think about the challenges that these organizations have with their talent pipeline, right? So
Brutal.
Here's another way to help address that, give back to the community and get everybody to grow together. So really exciting
Thanks.
stuff.
It's been a fun project.
So, and as you're describing it, many times as we think of this in the context of creating guideposts and just helping, not necessarily telling people how to go through the guidepost, but making sure that they move toward the guidepost. As they move toward the guidepost, they get to the end. You also talked a bit about things where I think of design thinking. It's understanding the end result and then designing backwards. As we wrap up, is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share with our audience that we've not gotten into yet?
I would just encourage people to try to ignore all the hype, all the fear of missing out, everything that we are told about selling or building companies or any of that. It's just such a distraction. And the actual thing that makes you happy is doing something that you are passionate about. And that's just, it turns out that that's everything.
And you had a great post. I don't know if this was the other day, and this is going to kind of timestamp things, but it was about building out a cryptocurrency.
Yes. Yeah. So let me talk about that for a second. So, cryptocurrencies and initial coin offerings are, the rage right now. And there were some ed tech companies that were going out and raising, $20 million in an ICO or ICO. And it's very distracting. I mean, holy cow. Okay. If apparently you can go out and raise, $20 million and not dilute your equity at all, then I would like to do that, please.
Sign me up.
Yeah. And so I was like, what is going on? And, as a developer, it turns out you can learn how to build a cryptocurrency pretty easily. Literally, it took me an hour to build one. It's called Carson Coin. Super valuable, people. Go buy it. No. And so anyway, did that and then dug into all these ICOs. And it turns out it's all marketing, pyramid, scam. It's just the worst thing ever. It's people saying, we're going to use cryptocurrency and blockchain to revolutionize, this thing. But the problem is, blockchain and cryptocurrency doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix anything. It's just a technology. And so I was able to basically say, yeah, it's a bunch of crap. So
we'll add a link to the show notes for that blog post as well.
Yeah, there's no shortcut. Sorry. Yeah. And those companies are going to find out the hard way too. They're going to, raise $20 million and then realize, oh yeah, it does take, 10 years of work to do anything anyway. So
you actually have to do work.
Yeah, darn it.
You have to do work.
Yep.
Ryan, of all the incredible things you talked about today, I want to make note of one that just got passed right over. You are the first Catalyst Sale guest to ever use the term rom-com.
I win. I'm so proud of that.
And I know that goes all the way back to the beginning of the episode, but for people that might not get it, what does rom-com mean?
It stands for romantic comedy, and it will change your life. Mike, I'm telling you, you really are missing out.
See, and I thought this was like a Comic-Con. I am.
This is like Tom Hanks. Right?
I am showing my lack of depth.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
It's
well,
okay.
So now that it's out in the open, I really asked because I knew Mike Simmons didn't know what you meant. So, but I wasn't going to call him out. He called himself out.
That's great. I love it.
Ryan, I know anybody that heard this is going to say, my goodness, that Ryan Carson, I need to know more. Where can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Oh, thanks. I'm on Twitter as Ryan Carson and Instagram as Ryan Carson. And then, of course, Treehouse. Just Google Treehouse and we are the #1 result. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. This has been great. Mike, great job today. Thank you so much for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.